So hello and welcome. This is Kimberly K. LaBoo, CEO and founder of LaBoo Publishing Enterprise. And welcome to another session of the LPE Author Chat Series. And this is our special Anthology edition of the LPE Author Chat Series, where I am interviewing authors from our soon-to-be released book, Set Apart and Chosen: God Uses Ordinary Women to Do Extraordinary Things. Our special guest today is Moana McAdams. She is a multi-passionate creator of Burning Spear Boutique, published photographer, Overstreet Guide to Cosplay, editor of Wildcard Chronicles comic series, and small business owner who advocates for diversity and positive, authentic representation of Indigenous peoples and cultures in comics and mainstream media. She holds a Bachelor of Business Administration and Management Information Systems with a minor in computer science, a Master of Science in Information Technology, and a project management professional certification. Moana is a bookworm who enjoys capturing life's precious memories through photography, traveling the world, and spending time with family. Moana's chapter in the book is titled Aftermath. So welcome to the LPE Author Chat Series, Moana. Glad to have you here.
Hi, Kimberly. Thank you so much. It's an honor to be a part of this book and to be here with you today to talk about it. So thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So I'm so excited about this because I will say that I love your chapter in this book.
Oh.
I feel like it was a history lesson for me. I felt more educated after I read your chapter. So it was very, very inspirational and very educational for me. And so I know that it will be for others as well. So I'm so excited about that.
Yay.
So I will start by asking you, as I've asked all the other authors, what made you say yes to this project?
So at the time when we were talking about this was like October, November-ish of last year, right?
Yeah.
I had actually, so I'm in a mastermind with other comic book creators, and we talk about our projects and things like that. But one of my goals that I was setting for 2019 was to be more focused on my own writing. Because currently in our comic book series, it's my husband who's the creator writer, and then I'm helping him to edit. But the more I talk to, the folks in my community and everything like that, they're like, well, we want to hear your story, like we want you to write more. And so at the time, it was just, I think the timing was just right. And it was a good opportunity to kind of test the waters, get my feet wet a little bit, because I'd already been planning to write a full novel on my own.
Right.
But I wasn't quite ready to tell that particular story yet because I was still kind of going through my grief, kind of going back to what Tashika was talking about. So I thought this would be a good way to push myself and kind of like get myself a little bit of a jump start so that the bigger project didn't seem quite so daunting.
Yeah, wow. That's
and I love what you were doing with women empowerment and being a voice for people who have made it through difficult situations and the different challenges in life, and sharing the story, because I feel like a lot of people, when you hear it, it's like, okay, so it's not just me. Sometimes in our heads, we can make it like it's this big mountain and I'm the only one that's going through this. But no, there's a lot of people out there who could benefit from that. So.
That is so true. And that's why I really feel that it is important for us to tell our stories and share our stories for that very purpose, because it's letting someone else see how we made it through that, or even just that we made it through a certain situation. And it allows them to see that they can make it through whatever they're going through too. So it gives people hope. And so I'm really excited about the project, and you guys have certainly put a whole lot of hope into this book, because I know for everyone who reads it, they'll be blessed by the tremendous stories that you've all shared. So That's good stuff. So you share so much in this book. It's amazing that you fit so much into that little chapter because you really maximized it. And so I love that about your chapter. So one of the things that you wrote about in your chapter was about the hiapo. Did I say it right? Okay.
Yeah.
And you said that you were, and that stands for the eldest child, correct?
Yes.
So let me point out too that this is very interesting is that I lived in Maryland and moved to Hawaii, and you're from Hawaii and moved to Maryland, DC area. So I just think that's really funny how our worlds have connected.
Yes.
And so I think that was the other part about this for me is being able to work with you, being someone that's from this beautiful island and just getting to know more about your culture and your story through your writing and your family is just been a joy. So thank you for sharing all of that.
Oh, you're welcome.
So you said as the eldest child in traditional times, the eldest child was given to the grandparents to listen, learn, and master the family genealogical chants, social and religious customs, and specialized skills of their ancestors, that you would become a living history book to memorize all the knowledge that the grandparents had to share. While other children played and learned skills, the eldest child studied and cared for the grandparents. Hiapo were taught to assume responsibility and would often advise family during challenging times of illness and crisis. So I want you to talk a little bit about that because I found that to be fascinating because I think as a child who didn't really have any relationship or not much of a relationship with either of my grandparents on either my father's side or my mother's side, I just found it fascinating that you talked about, how those things were passed down to you guys in your culture. And I think that that's a lot of what's missing in our world today, that very little is being passed down, if anything at all. So talk to me about that and what that was like for you, because I just love that.
So it's funny that you say that we need, it's being lost in today's culture. And it really is, because even what I was able to get is I'm sure it is a pale comparison into what it used to be, back when, before, I would say pre-colonizer times, when our culture was still vibrant and thriving and not necessarily like kind of watered down. It's very commercialized now. And so that's why like a part of my purpose for introducing that is to raise awareness on the cultural aspects that I'll get into later in other books and other projects that I want to do. But so being the elder child, you do have a lot of responsibility. Growing up, my sister and I, we had both of our parents were working. My father was on a night shift. My mother was a typical day job. So we spent a lot of time with my grandparents. Particularly on my mom's side, we used to work in the garden with her, and she would teach us how you can, grow your own food. And like even today, like I can smell, like if I go into the garden area, I smell certain things, and it raises a lot of memories, from like when people used to still not be afraid of hard work and farming for their own food, and like these days we got Uber Eats, and
Right.
I'm guilty too, right? Like, it's fast right there. But it's not just the food and that kind of thing. It's like the work ethic of putting in the work and, it taking time and not being an instant gratification like we have now. And teaching those work ethics to our kids who, these days, all they want to do is sit in front of a screen a lot of the time. And if you let them do that, that's what they're going to do. And how are they supposed to retain the lessons that they're being taught from parents, the great grandparents? If we, as ourselves, as the older generation, are not taking our own responsibility to ensure that there's still those traditions and those legacies are still being passed on. And that's why I feel like storytelling and writing books and those kinds of things are really, really important.
Yeah, I agree. because we have to find some kind of way to, I don't even know if we can get it back at this point, but like you said, raising awareness about it. I'm glad you're trying to do that, because I think we're just so far out there now. It's like,
yeah, I think it's a big challenge for a lot of us, not just Hawaiians, but
yeah,
a lot of indigenous peoples who have seen a transition in the way we live our lives now.
yeah, true. So one of the other things you talked about in your chapter was about what's your chapter, actually, Aftermath. You were talking about the drastic the drastic turn that your life took after your island was hit by Hurricane Iniki, and all of the damage that was done during that time. So can you tell us like a little bit about that? Because you write, it extensively about it in the book, but what about that specifically changed your life?
So as I was trying to figure out like what part of my story that I wanted to tell here, I kept going back to like, okay, what really is it that gave me the qualities and, things that I kind of lean back on as a woman now, basically like throughout my life. And I always go back to the time of the storm, because it was pretty crazy, because it hit the islands like in a major way. And so like I've seen, people talk about storms hitting Florida, and those kinds of things. And I'm not discounting those by any means at all. But if you look at Hawaii, where it's physically located, there is nothing around it. Like it is about the most remote spot that you can get to. And when the storm hit, we had nowhere to go. Like, if you're in Florida, you can like, okay, I'm going to go road trip to family somewhere else, another state, evacuate, get out of there.
Yeah.
In Hawaii, you're there. Like, unless you have family on the mainland who you can get to and you have the money and the resources to get there. But most people who are living on the islands don't have those means. So for us, it's like, okay, batter down the hatches. Here we go. Like, and the homes are very, a lot of the, where the locals live it's very humble homes. You know what I'm saying? These are not brick homes. These are not really solid homes in a lot of cases. And so it was just like a very much of a community effort, both before, during, and after the storm. And in the book, I talk a little bit about how my grandparents' home was totally, demolished. And because of that, because my parents are the ones in the family who, everybody tends to lean on for strength, for support. If some things happen, kind of going back to the Hapo thing, like if a bad thing happens, my parents are usually the ones who are dealing with it. And so we had 3 people, my grandparents and my uncle, who came to live with us. And it was really hard because at the same time, my father had lost his job because of the hurricane. He works like many other Hawaii families in the tourism industry. So with the hotels experiencing a lot of damage, they weren't able to open. So that means like tons of jobs were affected. Lots of families were affected. And so if you think about that in the context of people being able to earn the living for their family, and also the competition that would now be in the market as the jobs come back, it was a lot of stress for my parents. And then for me, again, as the oldest, as the hiapo, I felt like a lot of the responsibility was also on me to help my parents take care of my sister, who's, obviously younger than me. Because we now had to take care of ourselves and my grandparents, who also came with, they're aging, right? So they have health issues, a lot of things, just the medical things. Particularly, I'm from the island of Kauai, and it is in the island chain, in the big scheme of that, it is the more rural island. So we don't have as much, excuse me, medical services available as, Oahu. So when certain conditions happen, people need to be medevac via helicopter to another island. We just don't have the facilities to handle those situations. And so that's what happened with my grandma. She had a heart attack and she had diabetes, all these compounding health issues that it was just a lot to juggle. And so during that time, I feel like all of those things that were like happening in such a small space of time.
Yeah.
And mind you, I'm only like, how old was I at this point? I don't know, maybe 13, 14.
Wow.
Like, I'm still relatively young.
Yeah.
But at the same time, old enough to understand, right, a little bit, and to try and pull my weight in some shape or form. And so a lot of those experiences have kind of like laid the foundation to help me deal with a lot of the things that I deal with now. Because I'm like, oh well, I overcame that, so
yeah,
it's still difficult. You're not diminishing the things that you're dealing with now, but it gives you more confidence to face those things and even help others who might be experiencing a similar situation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow. See, I told you guys. It's like a history lesson. So tell us how you made it from Hawaii to DC. Like what took you to DC?
Insanity? No.
That's what I'm saying. Like what?
No. So I'm sure you know because you live in Hawaii now.
Yeah.
Hawaii is one of the most expensive places to live in the country. And so you'll see, I don't know if you've noticed this yet, but a lot of the local families live multiple generations in a house.
Yes.
Because the cost of living is so expensive that's how you survive. Like everybody stays together. We pool the resources so that we can survive.
Wow.
And so that's kind of like how it was. I mean, we were already experiencing that, but at the time, I wasn't sure if my mom would want me to leave because moms, they're just like, it's my baby, and it's the first baby, right? So it's the hardest one.
Yeah.
So I was going to college at University of Hawaii, and there were some recruiters for one of the federal government agencies who were recruiting for summer interns, and that. I actually happened to be in the major that they were looking for, was computer science or electrical engineering. And I asked my mom about it. She was like, yeah, go for it. This is a great opportunity.
Wow.
And so I applied, and it was the first time they were actually recruiting in Hawaii. So I was one of 15, I believe, students throughout the state who accepted summer internships, to come to the DC area. And I think I was the only one of that 15 who eventually accepted a full-time position.
Wow.
Because a lot of the people in Hawaii, it's really hard for them to leave because it's all they know, and it's, again, because it's a remote island chain.
Yeah.
It's, being away from your family for a really long time is hard. So, but yeah, I thought up here eventually, yeah.
And so, yes, in the book, you talked about that move from Hawaii to DC and how it was a bit of a culture shock for you. So what was the hardest part about that move for you?
I think the hardest part was not having a lot of people that I knew here. I had like maybe 2 or 3 people that I actually knew. One was someone who I had been with me. We went to college together at University of Hawaii. And then another person I had not met in person, but I met her through a mutual friend. She's from Maui. And so we met and started hanging out. And then I joined her halau, which is her hula group, for those who are not familiar. And then that's how I started to, I kind of got my foot in with the Hawaiian community that is here. And it kind of expanded from there. So yeah, and then, I'm pretty easy to get along with. So eventually I started, getting to know more folks, but at first it was really difficult. Yeah.
And then another thing that you've done since you've been there to make you feel more at home was you started a business like designing clothing or
Yes,
something?
I did. Yeah, I actually, we started it. When did I start it? 2015, I believe. Um, so for me, like going home to Hawaii, I try to go once a year. And it's usually like that time I'm like, all right, I gotta buy all my stuff, you know, in one shot.
Yeah.
Come back home. And then I was like, but I don't want to wait, you know, like I want clothing more readily available. So I went online. At the time, there were very few, and still are, very few Hawaii fashion boutiques, designers, whatever you want to call them, who have an online presence. And the ones who do aren't the communication to customers online is not as responsive as you would expect.
Wow.
And so I was like, oh man, well, why don't I just start, like, let's see if I can make my own clothes. You know, so I made a couple pieces. They weren't the greatest at the beginning. Nothing is. But I just wore my stuff and I was happy. I was proud that I was, able to make my own clothing. And then other people would ask me, like, where'd you get that? And I'm like, oh, I made it, like I'm just, making it for myself. And they're like, oh, can I get one? And I everywhere I went, it was like people were asking and asking and asking. I'm like, okay, well, I guess maybe I could start. I don't know what I'm doing yet, but sure. And then it kind of grew from there. And a lot of it that keeps me going, my passion for that, is that it's my way to stay connected back to the islands and to my culture, and to help others do that too, and also use it as another opportunity to raise awareness for Hawaiian culture. And it just gives you a lot of avenues for that. So
yeah, that's awesome. So let's talk about what the writing experience was like for you for this project.
Oh man, the writing experience. Well, so it was Fast and Furious. So I'll tell you guys a little backstory. Because, okay, so Kimberly and we talked, and I think I accepted the contract. It was like mid-November. And she was like, all right, the deadline is 31 December. And I'm like, like, it's 6 weeks, guys, 6 weeks. And this is my first project, right? So it's not like I have a routine and,
right.
like battle rhythm to do this. I'm just like, all right. So, but I mean, it's like any other project. So I was just like, okay, I need to make time, prioritize these things into my schedule. So into my planner I went. I'm like, right. But the biggest like challenge for me with this whole project was like, again, I said, which part of my story did I want to write? Because the real story that I'm trying to write is how I lost my father. But how it's been almost 2 years now. And so I've been talking on social media about how I wanted to write my book to tell his story, to capture his legacy, because my father was very humble, but he left a really strong impact. And I felt like, with anybody, not just him, but with anyone, if we don't tell their story, were they here? Like, who's going to know about them? Like, history remembers the ones who are written about.
Yes.
So like it is our responsibility, if we want somebody's story to be remembered, that we need to write about it ourselves. It may not be perfect, but hey, it's out there, and it's, we have to control our own narrative.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to write the story about my father, but kind of like what Tashika was talking about in her session, I was still going through it. It was still very raw, and it still is, kind of going through the phases of grief. That I would talk about little snippets about how I was feeling, but I wasn't ready to write a full novel. And so as I was thinking about it, I was like, okay, what do I want to do with this book? We started off and you said it was very educational. And that was one of my goals. I wanted it to be like, just pique a little bit of interest on like what the Hawaiian culture is. Because eventually I'm gonna, do some books about that. There's a lot of books out there today, but I want to write a children's line for that, because I feel like the children are the ones who need to know it.
Yes.
And then I also wanted to talk about, the story that I did write, because I lost my grandmother shortly, after the hurricane. And that was particularly difficult for me because I was here at the time. I was already, I had already, I think I was, no, I was doing my internship out here, and I wasn't able to go home and make it to her funeral. And I think it impacted me even more because as I was in college at the time, I was taking Hawaiian language, and I really wanted to learn it so that I could speak fluently with her, because she would speak to me all the time when we were young, and I'm like, Grandma, I don't understand you. I wish I could, because we weren't really taught it at home a whole lot, because in my grandmother's generation, they were like punished for teaching. They were punished for teaching their children the native tongue.
Yeah,
they don't understand that. So, and losing her and again dealing with all of that helped me to kind of know what to expect a little bit with my dad. It was still very, very different, but it prepared me for it. So I wanted to touch a little bit on each part, and then expound upon it a little bit more in my subsequent book projects. So
yeah, well, you did it beautifully. You really did, and it really all came together so nicely. So I really commend you for that. So we only have like 3 minutes left.
Okay.
I want to ask you real quick, what advice do you have for others who are considering writing?
I would definitely say to do it. Take the leap. It's going to be scary. Anything you knew that you do is a little scary, but definitely find someone maybe who has written before, a mentor of some sort. Talk to Miss Kimberly. She's very supportive. She's been amazing in this project. To give you a little bit of confidence, that your story does matter. I guess that's what I want people to know. Like, your story matters, even though you may think that it's not important. There are other people who could definitely be blessed from it. Like we just started these interview sessions. I think we had like 4 so far, and everyone I'm like, oh my God, I need to read this story. Like, it's just, everybody has a story to share. And I feel like it's not going to be a hit with everybody. That should never be your goal. You don't want to hit everybody. Like, everybody's not your audience. That's another thing I want people to know.
Yeah.
Everybody is not your audience, but there is an audience out there. Find your community, and they will, the hardcore ones will help you expand your readership and just tell other folks about what you're doing. So yeah.
Wow, you guys are so quotable. Like, and Mary Merle's in my head right now because I'm like, oh, that needs to be on a quote. Oh, that's really good. And she's typing it in the chat. And so I'm glad you're capturing this because I want those quotes for
Yes.
So when you see me post a quote and it has Moana McAdams, you are now quotable. When the history, what would you say? Something like, oh, let me scroll back and see what she said. It's history remembers the ones who are written about. I love that. So you're going to see that quote pop up. So I'm just telling you now.
Okay. That's awesome.
Awesome. So last but not least, the most important thing right now is we are still in our pre-order campaign. So please tell people who are here to support you where they can pre-order your book.
Okay, you can go to my website. It's easy, www.moanamcadams.com. So it's basically just my name.com. And if you can see the banner up there, it's right there. And also you can find me on Facebook. I'm definitely on Facebook a lot. And you can find me there under the Burning Spirit LLC, or my personal page, which is just Moana McAdams. On Instagram, you can find me as The Real Life Moana.
I love that.
And on Twitter is just Moana McAdams as well.
Okay. So. Awesome. So thank you so much for being here for this interview today. I can't wait for everybody else to read what I've read. It really, really was good and really is good and just so inspiring and, like I said, educational. So for those of you who want to buy the book from Moana, she said at www.moanamcadams.com. very simple, and place your orders. And the book is set to launch on March 4th. So we're very, very excited about that. To all of our viewers, thank you so much for being here and joining us for another session of the LPE Author Chat series. We have another one coming up later on this evening, so stay tuned, set your notifications, and be sure to join us. If you are someone who is thinking about writing your own book, be sure to reach out to us. Visit www.laboopublishing.com. Take care. Be blessed, guys. Bye-bye.